Las Vegas is a ghost town.
The sun just set, and the whole city is already asleep.
Vegas airport. Look at how empty it is. It's almost eerie. There are people down there.
Scenes that seemed only possible in dreams are now a reality in many places across America. In 2025, when the world is celebrating international visitors more than ever, the United States, once the global tourism capital, will be the only country among 184 economies predicted to lose visitors and revenue. The consequences are not just empty airports and quiet tourist spots, but also a small restaurant with fewer tips, a taxi driver working extra hours without increased income, and a middle-class family in Florida paying higher local taxes because of a shortfall in the tourism budget. That's the reality that's creeping into every meal, every bill. What happened in the end? Why has a country once considered the dream of millions of tourists now become a place many people avoid? In this video, we'll peel back the layers together, and you'll see. This story isn't just about tourists, but about the very future of ordinary Americans like us. Let's get started. Let's remember, it was only in 2019 that the US welcomed nearly 80 million international visitors, so many that if they were lined up, the queue could wrap around the United States 4 times. New York, Las Vegas, Miami, Grand Canyon. Each name is like a winning lottery ticket in the eyes of tourists. Europeans save all year to set foot on American soil. The Japanese consider checking in at Times Square a milestone in life. Even Brazilian, German, and Korean tourist groups consider this a modern pilgrimage. It was a time when the dollar was moderate and the B1/B2 visa wasn't enough to deter people. America is considered a safe, vibrant, and opportunity-rich place. Going to America is not just a trip, it's a symbol of status. Have you ever heard the saying, "If you haven't been to New York, you haven't truly seen the world"? In the 2010s, that statement was not an exaggeration at all. At that time, those working in the US tourism industry benefited significantly. A family in Florida who opened a small motel also made a fortune during the summer. Taxi drivers in San Francisco only need to run the airport route to support their families. A retiree in Orlando recalls, "Every summer, the restaurant was full of European customers, and the tips were so plentiful that they had to hire extra grandchildren to work part-time." Times Square in 2019, brightly lit neon signs, streets packed with tourists taking selfies. Broadway tickets sell out like hot dogs on the street. That's America, the center of the world. And yet, less than a few years later, that light faded. The airport, once bustling with passengers, has become a parking lot with cold, empty seats. We used to be a dream. And now, sometimes it feels like a dream that's expired. Question for you. If you had lived during that golden age, what do you think was lost the most? Money, image, or the belief that America is always the #1 destination? But now that #1 position is gradually being lost, and that's when we delve into this decline. You'll see, everything has its own reason. What do you think you'll get in America with a $100 bill? For Americans, it's enough to buy a few packs of beef and a case of beer at Walmart. But for a European or Canadian tourist, in 2025, that $100 bill would feel like a rock tied to their suitcase. Because before they could even spend it, they had to pay an extra 7 to 10% just to exchange the money. A vacation in the US suddenly became a luxury item, and the American dream, in the eyes of many, turned into a blazing red bill. A strong dollar sounds proud, but it's like a double-edged sword. It made American corporations appear richer on paper, but it drove the tourism industry into a state of low visitor numbers. The WTTC has forecast that international visitor spending in the US in 2025 will decrease by nearly 7%, equivalent to a loss of approximately $12.5 billion USD. Put next to a familiar image, that amount is enough to pay the electricity bills for an entire year for over 10 million middle-class households. Instead of going into the pockets of waiters, taxi drivers, or restaurant owners, that money evaporated due to the exchange rate. And then, without looking far, its consequences are right there in everyday life. In New York or Orlando, waiters say tips from European customers have disappeared. A hotel in Manhattan has plenty of luxury rooms available, but domestic guests only book standard rooms. Las Vegas, the city that never sleeps, was once a paradise for Canadian visitors. But now it's seeing a drop in visitors of up to 20% compared to projections. The casino was still lit, but the light shone on rows of empty tables. Meanwhile, local residents are bitter. There are many domestic tourists, but they spend sparingly. A $3 latte can't make up for the $10 pastry that French tourists use to order extra. A bitter but true saying. We have airports packed with Samsonite suitcases, but the safes are empty. And this is what makes me think. As the dollar strengthens, who really benefits? Are we sacrificing some nice numbers on the exchange rate board for the survival of millions of jobs in the service industry? What about you? Do you believe a strong dollar is a sign of prosperity? Or is it causing every vacation, every tip, every small shop to gradually disappear in America itself? But wait, because expensive is only half the story. The rest, an invisible barrier right at the border crossing, is what truly turns tourists away. Don't take your eyes off it. Imagine you've spent thousands of dollars on a round-trip ticket and sat on a plane for 10 hours from Paris to New York. The visa in the passport is brand new with a clear red stamp. But instead of being welcomed, you're separated from the crowd, led into a small room, seated opposite a security officer, and asked dozens of questions like a suspect. It's no longer welcome to America. It's more like a test of patience. This isn't uncommon. TUI, a travel agency specializing in bringing European tourists to the US, has warned that an increasing number of tourists are being detained, and some are even being sent back despite having visas. And from October 2025, another layer of fees will be added: the visa integrity. Fee, $250. It sounds small compared to the total cost of the trip, but when added to airfare, hotels and meals, it becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. From being a dream destination, the US has become the most complex destination. Who will be the first to suffer? Of course, as always, it's just ordinary Americans. An Uber driver in Chicago is losing long rides from the airport to downtown. A hotel employee in Orlando receives fewer tips, meaning family dinners have less meat. A tour guide in Miami, who used to live off European tours, now has to work extra grab shifts to make up for lost income. On Reddit, one audience member said this: "We build a wall of paperwork, then are surprised when no one wants to cross it." It's true, it's both funny and bittersweet. Because while the US is busy tightening its borders, Canada, Mexico, and Europe are putting up welcome back signs and smiling broadly. And it's no surprise that international tourists are starting to choose those places over the US. So the question is, are we protecting our borders so meticulously that we're losing guests who bring faith and billions of dollars? And when these fences are erected, what happens next? That's when we have to look at the bigger picture. The whole world is opening up, while America is falling behind. Do you see this paradox? While the world's tourism is growing by 5%, the WTTC has singled out the US as the only country predicted to see a decrease in international spending in 2025. Globally, we've surpassed the 2019 mark, while we've fallen behind and lost momentum. A country that was once confident as a global tourism capital has suddenly become the class troublemaker. It hurts, doesn't it? Look around. Canada is launching the Welcome Back program, streamlined procedures, easier visas, plus an inviting media campaign. Mexico is launching affordable all-inclusive travel packages, complete with friendly smiles. Europe is constantly promoting safety and convenience. Japan even relaxed visa requirements for many Southeast Asian countries. The result? Tokyo, Cancun, and Paris airports are bustling. And American airports? It's still busy, but mostly Americans are flying out. See, middle-class Americans are now choosing to go to Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, or even Lisbon instead of Florida or California. 2024 data shows that outbound travel, Americans going abroad, has surpassed 108% compared to 2019. We become tourists of the world, while the world no longer flocks here as it once did. Once upon a time, Americans were proud that the whole world came to us. Now we're the ones waiting in line for hotel rooms abroad. How ironic. This story touches every family dinner table. A father in Texas said, last year he took his wife and children to Cancun instead of Florida. Why? Cheaper air tickets, attentive resort service, and most importantly, no need to worry about complicated procedures. A simple, peaceful getaway. Domestically, high room prices, strained services, and fewer international tourists have also diminished the lively atmosphere. That's when you see, when the world is fully open, travel isn't just for fun, but is as fiercely competitive as trade. Whoever opens early, greets customers warmly, and causes the least inconvenience, that person wins. As for the US, we chose to build more barriers, from exchange rates and visas to strict security. To put it bluntly, if we compare it to a restaurant, the world is the one with a brand new tablecloth and wine poured for the guests, while we are the ones hanging a sign that says, "Caution, strict inspection." Here's a question for you. Are we pushing customers away from our doorstep with our own hands, then patting our chests and saying we're still doing fine? And if this trend continues, what will happen to jobs that depend on international tourist flow, from bartenders and tour guides to small shop owners in tourist towns? That's when we have to face the truth. As the world moves forward, America isn't just standing still, it's falling behind. And that impact will hit the wallets of ordinary Americans directly. A paradox I've only recently realized. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA, reported a record-breaking 3 million passengers per day passing through airport checkpoints during the peak season of 2024 to 2025. The corridors were crowded, the loudspeakers blared continuously, and suitcases were so crammed together that you just wanted to throw off your shoes and run. But right after the international customs area, many shops are still sighing. Where are the foreign customers? The US domestic market is booming, that's true. We Americans are traveling more than ever, but inbound, meaning international visitors to the US, is still about 9% lower than in 2019. And it is this shortage that is distorting the picture of the tourism economy. Because international visitors don't just shop, they bring something more valuable, new foreign currency, a source of real, fresh money that contributes to the trade balance. When there's a shortage, the tourism industry looks like it has a lot of customers, but in reality, it's short on cash. Let's translate the number into everyday terms. Tens of billions of dollars lost from international spending is equivalent to the budget needed to build hundreds of community hospitals, or to pay the salaries of hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers. But instead of flowing into the pockets of hotel workers, taxi drivers, or coffee vendors, that money vanished. We have a busy airport, but the government's wallet and the family's wallet are empty. Retirees in Florida see this clearly. When fewer European tourists visit, the price of resort accommodation may decrease slightly. It sounds fun, but the reality is that local taxes are increasing to make up for the shortfall in the tourism budget. A trade no one wanted. Or take the story in New Orleans. A small cafe owner confided, "American customers are plentiful, but they only buy $3 lattes. French customers often order an extra $10 pastry. A large quantity doesn't make up for the quality of spending." In other words, we have many Samsonite suitcases going through TSA checkpoints, but the safes don't get any heavier. It's ironic. It's like a supermarket scene where there's always a long line, but the shopping carts are full of instant noodle packets. There's noise, but no profit. And it's the ordinary workers, bartenders, tour guides, Uber drivers, who are bearing the brunt. They don't care about global tourism charts. They just see less tips, longer shifts, and their electricity and water bills still rising steadily. Do you think the US can turn this situation around? Or will we continue to witness the dream of a bustling airport remain an illusion, with crowds but empty wallets? From dreams of millions to empty airports, we're talking about the future of work, of taxes, and of the average American's wallet. And if this continues, what will the future of America be? If one day the global travel rankings no longer mention the United States in the top 3 destinations, what will happen? Canada, Mexico, Europe will take center stage, smiling warmly, while the US will be on the sidelines, watching international tour groups pass by like VIPs, leaving an old, run-down restaurant. In that scenario, the first thing affected is not the grand national image, but the lives of ordinary people. A bartender in Las Vegas lost half a shift's worth of tips. An Uber driver in Miami had to wait longer for international customers to request a ride. And a small business owner in New Orleans saw their revenue drop by several $100s each week. When added up, the entire service economy contracted. And you know, when income decreases, who will make up for it? It is the American taxpayer. Let's convert it for easier understanding. If the US loses another $10 to $15 billion from international visitor spending, that amount is equivalent to the budget to pay over 200,000 community nurses, or enough to repair thousands of crumbling bridges. Instead of receiving that foreign currency from tourists, we'll have to get it from our own pockets. There really is no free lunch. The problem is, once the image of America, the #1 destination, fades, it's very difficult to regain. Europeans will get used to Spain, Asians will choose Japan or Korea, and Canadians will flock to Mexico. Travel habits are like water, easy to flow with, difficult to flow against. And if this trend continues, America will no longer be a dream, but just a point of reference. A somewhat painful joke. One day the American dream will no longer be sold at the check-in counter, but will only exist in history books. And if that scenario becomes a reality, it's not just a matter for the tourism industry. It's a matter for every middle-class family, for every tax bill, for the quality of public services that you and I use every day. And what about you? Do you think America will lose that position? Or will we turn things around before it's too late? And if you were the decision maker, would you choose to open the doors wider or continue to build more invisible fences? Whatever the answer, this is no longer just about tourism. It's a test of whether America is still attractive enough to hold the world's attention, or just enough to keep itself in crowded but value-empty airports. You know, it's easy to complain. But if you just sit at the bar, tell stories about the empty airport, get fewer tips, and the bills go up, then nothing will change. So, the question is, what should we Americans do? First, let's start with making smart consumer choices. If there are fewer international tourists, then the spending power of Americans themselves becomes even more important. We can prioritize local restaurants, family-owned motels, and small businesses in the community. Every cup of coffee you buy at the corner shop instead of a large chain is a vote to keep your neighbor's job. This isn't just spending, it's an investment in the community's survival. Second, think about the value of domestic experiences. The United States is vast and rich, with sites that many foreigners have dreamed of seeing. Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, Great Lakes, all are within easy reach. When you travel domestically, you save money while also keeping funds flowing within the US tourism industry. And if you're a retiree or a middle-class family, this is even more significant. A domestic trip can be cheaper than a ticket to Cancun, and more importantly, the money stays in Americans' pockets. Third, leverage smart technology and finance. Cashback credit cards, cheap ticket hunting apps, and even travel insurance. All of these help you save money while also. Instead of complaining that going to America is expensive, we can point out tips to make the trip reasonable and easy. Finally, and this is something few people say, speak up. Not extreme, not personal sarcasm, but constructive feedback. Why does the visa process have to be so complicated? Why isn't airport infrastructure being adequately invested in? It is the collective voice that can create pressure for the system to change, helping the US regain its friendly image in the eyes of tourists. So, what do you think? Should Americans continue to be helpless spectators watching the international airport empty? Or should they become active players, keeping this dream alive? This is the time to turn the downturn into an opportunity to reflect, spend more wisely, travel domestically more, and most importantly, demand the system do better. Because the American dream shouldn't end with empty seats in the airport, but must continue on our own 2 feet. So, we've been on a journey, from the golden age with tens of millions of visitors, to crowded airports with empty wallets, and even the prospect of the US losing its role as the #1 destination. This isn't just about travel, it's a bigger question. Who do we want America to be in the eyes of the world? Now I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a significant change in the tourism industry around where you live? Do you think the US needs to change its visa policy, or should we focus more on domestic tourism? And most importantly, do you still believe the American dream is attractive to international visitors, or is it just nostalgia? Please leave your comments below. I read every comment and might include your story in the next video. If you find this analysis helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any perspectives on the American economy, politics, and society. Each of your subscriptions helps me continue to make in-depth, data-driven, yet also emotional analysis videos. The content of this video is solely for analysis, commentary, and sharing personal perspectives based on public data from reputable organizations and media outlets. This is not investment, financial, or policy advice. All data and evidence are subject to change over time, so always verify further from multiple sources. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next videos.